Hey there, welcome to the Marriage Unmasked podcast. Have you ever felt that love should be enough in your marriage, but yet you still struggled? That is what we're going to talk about today. Is love enough to make your marriage work? And this is such a popular belief, right? That you find the one and you get married and you love each other, and that is what should make the marriage go round.
It's like the happily ever after thing. It's like you meet somebody, it's all just rainbows and butterflies, and then it's happily ever after, and it's all about this feeling of love that you're gonna have in the marriage forever.
And so it can be really confusing when that's not when you do hit struggles, when life stress happens and you feel frustrated because love doesn't seem to be enough anymore. And we get that, and we just want to tell you we've been there too, where we're like confused on what to do next. We love each other, but like when you're at a breaking point, or when you're at this low place in your marriage, what to do then? And we want to just offer you some hope today, and also dive in more on this topic and answer that question: is love enough to make your marriage work?
Yeah.
So, first of all, what does love really mean when we're saying, is love enough to make your marriage work? What does that really mean? Is it like an infatuation where, it's more like that lust and the attraction? And I mean, I think those are all parts of, those are all parts of marriage, and there's nothing wrong with attraction. Actually, we desire attraction, right? We want to be attracted to our spouse.
Yeah, you want to be in love with each other. Like there is something to that.
To the
popular
feelings,
idea.
right?
Yeah,
The feeling.
popular idea of love to be, feeling these warm, amazing feelings, this close connection with someone is incredible, and it's a beautiful part of marriage.
So maybe this is a great question just to ask yourself, like, what do you think love is? Do you think it's the romance and the, attraction of it? Is it the, like where you at least like your spouse? Because there's some days when that is really challenging to even like them, but you may still love them even if you don't like them.
Yes.
Or is it a commitment to you, and that's all it is, right? Like, well, I don't really enjoy my spouse, but I'm committed, and so I'm in this for the long haul, and I love them. I choose to love them. So it could be a lot of different things for you.
But what we want to talk about today is really the biblical view of love, because that is so important. How does God see love in a marriage? And He sees it as this. It's really this beautiful combination of like a decision, it's feeling, and it's also action. Like love is action. So the great passage about that is really 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not rude, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. And you list off all those things, and that gets a little overwhelming to think of all that's involved in what love is. But it is this amazing decision to really choose the other person no matter what, and to do whatever they need the most. That's how Jesus loved us. He loved us. He saw us in our need, and in our pain, and being completely lost, even when we were enemies, and chose to love us. So he made a commitment to us. He chose to love us and to do the thing that we needed most, even at great personal cost and sacrifice to himself.
Well, and he still does that. He still
Yes.
he still chooses to love us every day. He still, just pours that on us, and that's really where our love for our spouse comes from. It comes from knowing how greatly we are loved by God, and then when we know that, we're able to outpour that onto others. It's when what we see in so many marriages is that it's so hard. One of the spouses or both is struggling to be loving, like it says in First Corinthians, because they're not feeling loved themselves. And that is a place in, that's a hard place to be in marriage, but it happens so
Yeah.
often. And so the answer to that is always to go back to God to get your love cup, right?
Yeah.
Or your,
The source. God
yeah,
is the source of that love. Yeah.
to get it overflowing so that you can spill that love out onto your spouse.
Yeah, you need God's love in order to love others, really. So yeah, it's such an amazing thing when you have that. Um, and the feelings are there too. I mean, you do need feelings. They just aren't the driving force. They aren't the main ingredient of love in marriage. I like to look at the feelings are kind of like the spice in. If you look at marriage as like a meal, which is an odd an odd analogy.
Yeah.
Look at marriage as like a meal. The feelings are really the spice. It's the flavor. It's what makes it very interesting and fun and exciting and flavorful. But there's other ingredients that are really the meat and the potatoes. They're really the bulk and the nutrients that you really need in a marriage. And those are things like commitment, and the daily actions that you take and the words that you say, and how you relate to your spouse, and many other things can also be part of that ingredient. But the love it needs to be there too. Otherwise, you know, the marriage feels stale and it feels like, okay, we're just kind of going through the motions and it's not great. So it is a both and, but you have to have the actual meal in order to enjoy the spice.
Who wants a meal with no spices, right? Not me.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
And so there's other core elements that need to be there in the marriage. So some of those things are communication. You have to have this ability to communicate, which is a skill that you can learn and grow in, so that you can communicate your feelings, communicate what's going on inside of yourself, and be vulnerable with your spouse and let them in. You also have to have respect. That's a huge one to have. If you don't have respect for each other, then you're going to be treating each other in such an unloving way, and it's going to really tear the relationship apart.
Yeah, respect is really valuing the other person, right? Seeing their value. And I know sometimes in marriage, you can lose that respect. Maybe someone shows up less than who God made them to be, and you begin to value them less, or maybe they don't even see themselves as valuable as God made them to be. And so, because they have such a low opinion of themselves, you value them less too. This is some sneaky stuff that isn't necessarily a conscious thought, but it can come in and sneak into the heart, and then you're starting to act in a disrespectful way.
Yeah, definitely. And even familiarity can breed that too. Like you're just so used to each other, and you stop really looking for the uniqueness in the other person, and you're taking them for granted, really, and then you lose respect for them in the way you're communicating to them and the way you are showing up for them. So that's a big one, respect. Another one is to have shared goals and values. That's very important that you are on the same page and that you know where you're going in your marriage and you know what marriage is all about and you know why you are together and what you're striving for. And also the value. I mean, having Christ in your marriage is so incredibly important. I like that passage in Ecclesiastes, which is like a cord of three strands is not quickly broken, and it reminds me of like husband and wife and Christ all together, wound together in one strong cord. So I like that passage for how Christ is part of our marriage.
Well, and like we said before, you know, God's love for us gives us the capacity to love. And so I can't imagine a marriage where your spouse doesn't know how to get their need for love met by God. And so they're just dependent on humans to love them. Well, humans are always going to love us imperfectly. And so then you're always giving from an empty cup, from a less than full cup.
It's so true.
And so that's just a huge value to share and to have in your marriage too, so that you can love each other really well.
Yeah, and without Christ, you become very codependent on each other. It's like always, like if you're not getting your needs met from your spouse, then you're finding it elsewhere, perhaps, and then it could be unhealthy places that you're finding your needs met, and it just the whole thing, like you kind of lean on each other far too much, if you don't have Christ as the foundation of your marriage. Um, and then another one that's huge, a big foundation of marriage is commitment. Um, that is huge to be able to choose the other person and to have this ongoing, constant decision. This is my spouse, and I am not going to look to the right or to the left. I'm going to stay with this person come hell or high water. I'm going to stay with them until the end. And that commitment is that is a huge foundational thing that needs to be there in the marriage relationship. And I know that that's gotten us through some really, really dark times where it was almost like that was all we had left, was just the commitment, just the decision to hang on and to love the other person.
Yeah, I mean,
despite what was going on.
I remember when we were at such a low place, and we're sitting there on our bed just staring at each other, like what is next? Just
Yeah.
like, okay, we know deep down we love each other, but we're just like, we can't, this is so unhealthy. We're both hurting so much. We are continually hurting each other, and we cannot catch up to the forgiveness needed.
Yeah.
And we're just so hurting. And so it's like, we love each other, but this is so like, what's next? Because this is so painful. And in that moment, it was, I was like I was just hopeless, like this, we've tried it all, and this is just not this marriage. My mind was going to this marriage just was never meant to be. And Adam brought in, he came in and reminded me of some of these things we talked about with like the shared values, and that we believe that God can heal even what seems so broken, and that we are committed. He reminded me, I am committed to you.
Mm-hmm.
And he was speaking hope into our marriage as well, like I believe that God can heal these things. And so it was just a little speck of hope that I needed. Because it's so easy when you have all these things. You could bring in pain from when you were a child, and you bring that into marriage, and it's unhealed, and it just can cause you to bring in so much hurt to your spouse then, or just not be able to receive the love they have for you. And then if you have in-law pain, if you have kid stress, work stress, you add in all these things, and you feel like love should be enough, and yet it can feel so confusing when you get to that low place.
Yeah, because so many of these other pressures and stresses just start to drown out any kind of like, especially any kind of feeling that you have. It just gets buried deeper and deeper.
Well, because the feeling is not there.
Yeah, the
in that
feeling is
moment,
getting it is. It's
in that moment, I didn't like him. I didn't want anything to do with him really, because
Yeah.
I felt like he was so toxic for me, and I knew I was also so toxic for him. I'm sure he didn't want anything to do with me either.
You were in quite the loop of negative energy back and forth.
So there were no positive feelings, but we did know. It's funny because you can literally separate the feelings from the love, because I did know I still loved him. I just didn't like him. I didn't want to be married to him,
Yeah, and that was.
I'm glad you can laugh about that now, because that's a pretty painful thing.
It absolutely was, and I was there too. I was in that same place. I just wasn't. Yeah, I mean, there's no give up. There's no give up. That's the thing. Like you just choose it and you just stay.
And we're not talking about abuse or anything like that, because that is a totally different discussion.
Very legitimate reasons to break a marriage.
Yeah.
Because if the other person, it takes two people to make a marriage. It really only does take one person to break it. And they break that when they break their commitment to you. They break that covenant with you, that agreement, and they cheat on you, or they are abusive, or
Someone can really leave the marriage too. I mean, like if I would have said to Adam, no,
yeah,
I don't want to work on this
because
anymore.
you're stepping out of that commitment.
Right. Yes.
If you step out of that commitment, then you break the marriage, and it doesn't really matter what I would say or do in that moment. I would have lost her, which would have been really painful.
Yeah. And another big core element is forgiveness. And this is one of the ways we walked through that was
Absolutely.
Forgiveness, because you absolutely need forgiveness to move forward in peace. Otherwise, you end up, even if you just say like I forgive you, but you really haven't done you haven't gone through the steps. We have a whole module in our Healing Your Marriage program on forgiveness because it's so important. And we believe it is a process. It's not just a, okay, I forgive you because I know that's what I should do.
Yeah.
It is a process. And I actually have a 3 F's thing that I like to teach wives, because when I work with them, because
I
it's
love that
so,
too.
I do it myself. It's these 3 F's. The first one is to feel. Because you need to feel whatever emotion is in you, because otherwise you store it down, you push it down, it just causes more damage. And so really feel, and this might take you days to really feel whatever emotion it is, right? It might be betrayal. You might feel abandoned. I mean, some big, heavy emotions. And so to feel, then to start working on that forgiveness. And we, like I said, we teach a 5-step process. But it's also a decision. And so to say like, okay, I'm making that decision to forgive him is very powerful, and asking God into that, asking for his power in forgiveness. And then after you are through that process of forgiveness, then you can come, that's my third F, face to face. You can come back and have conversations, work on the reconnection, and getting that back. Because without that, I see a lot of wives struggling with resentment, with all these years, all these years of pain built up, and they don't know how to move forward. They don't know how to trust their husband again, or get connection or intimacy back in their marriage.
And I think this is actually really important for guys too, because a lot of times guys have disconnected themselves from their emotional side, or their emotions, or are so out of tune with them that they don't even identify what those emotions are. I know I've done that before too. So to me, I know there have been many times where I have forgiven Kara by just trying to make a decision and then not having worked on the feelings themselves, or even like processing them, but just stuffing them down, or whatever. And that creates a lot of resentment in the man too. So it's not just for wives. Guys have to feel this stuff out too. You have to actually get more in tune with your emotional center and what you're actually feeling, identify it and process that, and then go these steps are really good for both husband and wife.
Yeah, otherwise we see couples who have shut parts of themselves off to their spouse, right? They feel this resentment or this, distrust or whatever. And so they have shut down that part. They refuse to open that part to their spouse. And so that's where we have major gaps in intimacy, in vulnerability, and disconnection in the marriage. So my little 3 F's are
I think God gave that.
They're helpful. Yeah, he did. No, he totally did. I mean, I didn't come up with that on my own. But I do practice it a lot myself. Yeah. So we want to leave you with some questions to reflect on for your own marriage in walking through this. So the first one is, what does love look like in your marriage right now? Like, we've given you some ideas of what it could look like, feelings, romance, infatuation, commitment, things like that. And then, is it more about the feelings for you right now, or is it showing up in your actions? And I know this takes some honesty, some humility to really get clear about what is the truth in your marriage right now. But I encourage you to do that. Maybe even journal about it, or maybe do these questions in your weekly check-in. We always encourage couples to do weekly check-ins with each other and get deeper. And then the second question is, what do you feel is missing in your marriage right now?
Yeah, that's
Of all the things that we've talked about, those important core elements: forgiveness, communication, respect, shared goals and values, commitment, so many different things. what's missing for you.
And maybe there's a couple of things that are missing, you know, that to identify those is powerful, and then to, you know, maybe you can't work on everything all at once, but you can start small, start somewhere, have that, identify that list of things and then start working on it.
And no shame, no
Yeah.
shame, right? We struggle with things in our marriage still.
Oh, yeah.
And we have to take inventory just like you are. When was the last time, this is the third question, when was the last time you chose to act lovingly towards your spouse, even when you didn't feel like it? Those are really powerful moments. And I know I struggle with this because I'm very emotional. Like, I am very emotional.
Yeah,
I feel emotions in a big way. And it's very easy for me to just follow them instead of bringing in God's voice and choosing to feel my emotions still. I'm not invalidating myself, but also to choose the action that is loving, right? The words that are loving, even if I don't feel it. And then when you did that, how did it impact your marriage? And I want you to celebrate yourself, right? Like, celebrate these wins, because these are powerful wins here for you when you choose to act in a loving way, even though you don't feel like it.
that's a big step. That's powerful.
And when your spouse does it, make sure you mention it to them too. Like, I know that wasn't probably what you wanted to do or say, and I really appreciate that you chose love over how you feel. That would be so encouraging. So, the question is, love enough to make your marriage work? I mean, love as a feeling is not enough, right? But as a daily choice rooted in God's love, it can sustain and grow your marriage and be what you need. So it's kind of a what do you call those questions where there's like, there's not really like a straight, clear, defined answer. It's kind of a nuanced thing.
It's like a trick question.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, we hope this was so valuable for you. As we mentioned, if you guys are seeing some gaps in your marriage and you really need some support, reach out. We're happy to offer you coaching. We have our Healing Your Marriage course, which is an incredible course for every married couple to go through. And the thing I love about it is when you get it, you have it for life. So you guys can go through this course over and over again.
I know, through our own course.
Yes. I mean, I think it's a good thing to do like every 6 months or so.
It's it can be a very valuable resource to
We
go back to.
Yeah, we need these reminders.
And then you also get those bonus things like the check-ins for all the different questions and stuff that you can use that are really, really
for your
helpful.
weekly check-ins. Yep, we have sex and intimacy questions. We have
communication questions and vision questions as well.
So we encourage you to take a look at that and invest in your marriage and continue to grow it, because it is a gift, and you guys are so powerful in helping each other to grow and also just speak so much life into each other and help you be who God made you to be. You get to actually help your spouse do that, and that's a really powerful thing. So we will see you in the next episode.